All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can listen to us every week on rte.ie, Apple and Spotify. You can subscribe to get the latest episodes as they land. Or if you fancy staring at this world map behind me week in, week out, watch us on YouTube, where you can also subscribe to the RTÉ Sport channel to get notifications from the latest podcasts, including the RTÉ Rugby and GA podcast, as well as match highlights and clips from our TV coverage. Lots to chat about today. Ireland women's were in action against Albania in the UEFA Women's Nations League on Friday, and they're also playing this evening. We're also into the final furlong of the League of Ireland, with Shamrock Rovers winning 4 in a row with 2 games to spare. So, to discuss that and a lot more, I'm joined by League and FAI Cup winner Graham Gartland, the 42.ie's David Sneyd, and journalist Barry Landy, who's also the author of Emerald Exiles, which was published a couple of years ago and delves into the Irish players who have looked to ply their trade beyond this country and the leagues in the UK. And hope you all had a good bank holiday. And I suppose, Graham, we'll talk about it in more detail later on, but the fact that Shamrock Rovers have done a 4 in a row, it's an achievement that shouldn't be, that should be really highlighted and shouldn't be underplayed.
No, it's a massive achievement. Like you said, for these group of players, and majority of them have actually been around. When you look through it, Alan Manus, I think that's his 6th league. The reason I start with Alan, obviously, it's the obvious choice in goal, but it's his last season as well. I remember playing against Alan in the cup final for Linfield, Setanta Cup final for Linfield back in 06, I want to say. Sorry, 07 it was. And he was man of the match. He was brilliant. And then Rovers signed him a couple of years later. A few years later, he was brilliant for them and secured 2 titles. He goes away. I then play with him at St. Johnson. And the ultimate professional. What a guy and what a career he's had, and he's one of the best goalkeepers I've been around. And what a fitting way for him to bow out with 4 in a row. But the likes of Pico Lopez, Roland Finn, Lee Grace, all these lads that have been mainstays for them and fully deserved, and they've been top professionals as well. And to have that hunger to constantly churn out results week in and week out, and to come back from difficult results at difficult moments to regain your title constantly, it's a fantastic achievement from the players, from the management staff, and for the club itself. It's been brilliant, and it's been built on solid foundations, as we keep saying. And most of the clubs that generally do well in this league will have good foundations in terms of a budget or a good training facility or a good place to play. And Rovers have all 3 of them, and that's why they've been continually successful. And have been successful on a consistent basis. I think a lot of fans look back on the 87 time when they won it with fondness, but also with a lot of pining for past glories of a stadium that belonged to them and a team that belonged to them. And I think they have it with this group of players, where they have a stadium that they can go to week in, week out. They know that's not changing. And they have a group of players that know what it means to play for the club, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in the League of Ireland review. And David, I mean, one thing we're also going to chat about in detail is your what I have to say is a brilliant interview you did with Darron Gibson, the former Ireland and Manchester United midfielder, in the 42.ie, I think was published Thursday of last week, where he detailed his addiction with sleeping pills and other matters as well. And how did the interview come about in the first place?
Just as sometimes just got chatting to someone who knows him, and I remember when I used to live in Manchester, just done a couple of interviews with Darron Gibson and just asked how he was, and someone said, "Oh yeah, no, he seems to be doing really well," and then just asked for a number to get passed on. It was a bit of a back and forth, and just over a couple of weeks of chatting with Darron himself, just kind of going through what I wanted to do with the interview and stuff, because obviously, I didn't know, as I was saying, actually about the sleeping pill stuff, and obviously other personal issues that you would have had that you went into detail with, in terms of, say, issues with, say, depression or anxiety, or just feeling kind of closed out and not being able to kind of talk properly to people around them and stuff. And I was kind of coming at it from the point of view of just seeing how he was now, and chatting about, obviously, people would have known about, say, the couple of incidents with drink driving, and that was what I kind of spoken about beforehand, just to listen, obviously chatting about this, but then seeing what the crack is with you now. And it wasn't really kind of flagged, well, that wasn't the issue, etc. Obviously it was one of the issues, but yeah, and then just went over to him, and he was very very accommodating. Obviously, he spent about 4 hours with him in his house and had chats about various aspects of his life, and he was just very open and just very vulnerable, I suppose, in the chat, talking about stuff, I suppose, that maybe he hadn't really spoken about even with friends, maybe up until maybe the last 6 months or so. And it's kind of maybe a bit of a symmetry to it in terms of, he was saying it was like a year ago this month when he had a seizure in his house, having obviously the sleeping pill addiction, when he was talking about taking 12 to 14 a night, and obviously he could have died. And then obviously he spoke about the kind of the impact that then had on his family and stuff, and what he went through to come through it. And yeah, so it was just like that. And in terms of the interview, obviously very nicely to say that about being a good interview, but it only comes from, I suppose, his willingness to be open and go through stuff with it. And it seemed as if he was happy to chat through a lot of difficult stuff, you know.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that later on in the pod. But Barry, as well, you've been over and back to Walsall, and the connection, of course, is with Drogheda United, who are going to be sharing owners, and we'll delve into that a bit later on as well. But your impressions of Walsall and that kind of area, and I suppose as a footballing town as well?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get an impression on the town, Raf. Walsall is one of these places where it's kind of served by its own train station, the Bestcott Stadium station. You come straight in from New Street and you arrive at the stadium. It's kind of out of town a little bit. It's like sort of retail park area, you know, it's out on its own. There's no pubs around it or anything like that. So it's difficult to get a sense of the area necessarily, but the club, they're doing some positive stuff off the pitch. So Trivella, who are going to be the new Drogheda United owners, have put some money in, approximately kind of 300 grand in the last 18 months to make some upgrades and some renovations around the place, just to spruce things up a little bit and make it a better environment for sort of match going fans. It looks pretty good. I mean, it's in good shape. I mean, it's Walsall are in League Two now at the moment, so they've got like an 11.5 seater stadium, the Bestcott, so it's one of the bigger stadiums in League Two. I mean, they're only getting approximately sort of 5,500-6,000 on any given Saturday. So you know, their attendance probably isn't where what they want it to be. But from speaking to fans, people involved with the supporters trust, journalists over there, generally speaking, Trivella get a positive review. So I suppose Drogheda is a very different animal in that it's a League of Ireland club. It's currently part-time, looking to go full-time. It's a very different kind of environment to a football league setup, I suppose. So time will tell how that translates to League of Ireland. But there are, you know, obviously examples of owners of English clubs buying into the League of Ireland in recent years anyway, like down in Waterford, and obviously recently at Shelburne as well with the Hull City owners. So I suppose time will tell.
Yeah, we'll delve into that as well a bit later on. But first, of course, the Republic of Ireland women's national team are in UEFA Women's Nations League action, and they beat Albania, who would be the group minnows, 5-1 on Friday, and they're playing this evening away in Shkodër, and they would be expected to pick up another 3 points. That's live on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. So RTÉ Sport Online's Anthony Pyne joined me a little bit earlier on just to talk me through the 5-1 win and also where the Ireland team is at. But first, let's listen to the interim manager, Eileen Gleeson.
Were you overall pleased with the performance as much?
I'm pleased with the second half performance, but not pleased with the first half performance. So we had a few things to speak about at half time in terms of we weren't happy with dropping off away from the ball and, you know, trying to continuously play into spaces that were crowded. So we talked about that, and I think the second half the girls did a lot better.
Because you were very happy with your clean sheets in the first two games, so I suppose that concession.
Yeah, so I'm not happy with the one goal conceded for sure. So, you know, that was something we spoke about and we wanted to continue with, but it is there now, and, you know, we dropped off, we had a player free, left the player free, so we have to these things happen and we have to move on as well.
How can you solve a problem like Katie though? I mean, what a performance tonight with her hat-trick, her 2 assists. Where is her best position?
Oh, listen, well, she just puts the ball in the back of the net. Katie McCabe scores bangers, so we're happy she's a hat-trick tonight, and, you know, it's a good 3 points. good second half performance and a nice way forward for Tuesday.
Well done to you, Eileen, and the team.
Thank you.
So that is Ireland interim manager Eileen Gleeson speaking after the 5-1 win over Albania in the third of the UEFA Nations League games that Ireland have in League B, and in that particular group already having dispatched Northern Ireland and Hungary. And Anthony, I mean, a 5-1 win, it was fairly comfortable apart from a couple of scares, including the 7th minute goal that Albania scored. But all in all, again, it's just a case of beating what's in front of you.
Yeah, well, it is. Look, I mean, Eileen Gleeson touched on it after the game and has been speaking more about that in the last couple of days in the build-up to this return fixture in Albania, that Ireland didn't play well in the first half. It was 2-1 at half-time because of Katie McCabe. Just her ability and, her form in front of goal is she's on fire at the moment. But, like, generally speaking, Ireland didn't play well. They were a little lopsided at times. They looked, I don't know if it was complacency or just this feeling that they kind of knew that they should win the game and probably were going to win the game in all likelihood, and were almost trying to overcompensate, trying to do things too quickly or not quickly enough, taking too many touches of the ball. And at times, particularly Abby Larkin's side, they were just getting a little bit caught too high up the pitch at times without the ball. They weren't transitioning quickly enough, and it was just all a little bit off. And against a better team, they would have been much more ruthlessly punished. But they're playing the 77th ranked team in the world in Albania. Albania's women's team was only formed in 2011. They are developing. They've got some good players. They had some tidy footballers. Their goal was a good finish, albeit Ireland did switch off. But ultimately, Ireland are a fitter, stronger team with more quality. And in the second half, they only had to go up a gear to just completely, shut the contest down. Katie McCabe was unbelievable. But, she is head and shoulders above everyone. When you're playing teams at this kind of level, that they're not going to be used to coming up against a player that kind of quality. They just aren't, and they really couldn't handle her. She played the game completely on her own terms. And as you say, Raf, at this point for Ireland, you can only beat what's in front of you. I mean, these games are tricky in their own way as well, because you're on a hiding to nothing. Like, you should win, and you should win comfortably. And therefore, Ireland win 5-1, and I'm here talking about the negatives, which is unfair, really, in a way. But that's the levels that they've set for themselves over the last couple of years. We're only going to learn more about this team come the spring, Raf. They will win the group. They will see this out now. I wouldn't be surprised if they won all 6 games. With all due respect to Hungary and Northern Ireland, Ireland are the strongest team in this group, and they'll go up to League A, and that's where you're in with the big guns thereafter. But for now, it's I guess it is kind of what Ireland needed after the World Cup, the heaviness of the World Cup, weaker opposition, a chance to play a little more freely, a little more expansively, to score goals, to clock up wins. And although it wasn't perfect on Friday night, it was comfortable in the end.
Yeah, and Katie McCabe, of course, with the hat-trick, as you mentioned, and then also momentously last night ranked 22nd in the Ballon d'Or, and that's a huge achievement for any player to even be on that list. But in terms of how she interpreted the free role, because in the September window she did start nominally at left wing back, albeit she had a bit of freedom to move. But in this free role that she had against Albania, how did she interpret it?
Well, she just ran the game. I mean, she's the thing with Katie McCabe. I think it's just become clear now. You can understand why previous managers have played her at left back or on the left, because of the power that she has. She's so strong down that side. But really, you need to get her on the ball as often and as high up the pitch as possible, because she is capable. Any sort of 25, 30-yard range, she's capable of scoring from that range. She's capable of threading passes and seeing things, and just by her physical strength and will to fashion things and make things happen against teams that are just going to sit back in this group. All the Ireland are the big shark in this group, so all the other teams are just going to sit back and try and make it as difficult for them as possible. So having someone like her centrally involved, high up the pitch, is obviously going to help. And you can see that 12 goals they've scored in their 3 games. What's happened as well is that Izzy Atkinson is getting a real chance. I think that's going to continue, because Izzy is a left-footed player. She just offers more natural width and balance on that side, but also she allows Katie McCabe to drift inwards in infield and play more centrally. I think if Ireland are really going to be committed, and look, Eileen Gleeson she's there on an interim basis. It doesn't look like she's going to be there beyond December. But whoever comes next, they're really committed to playing a little more adventurously, then you would think that Katie McKay will be stationed. It's similar to where she is now. But you're robbing Peter to play, Paul. She's so good that really you'd love to just clone her and have 5 around the pitch. And then we'd probably be talking about winning the World Cup and winning the Euros. But for now, I do think, like, particularly with the development of Atkinson, I think the way forward for this team would be for Kate McKay to be stationed consistently centrally and as high up the pitch as possible.
Yeah, and Kira Carusa as well with another brace, and again that's 4 goals in her last 3 games. Obviously in the World Cup when we were following her progress, her work rate really stood out, I think, especially in the game against Canada. But she's found a goal scoring edge, albeit against teams of this level. But it's important clearly that if there's going to be a cutting edge, that she's able to provide that.
Well, she's getting way more chances. She's still missing chances, and Kira Carusa is tireless, and she makes a lot of stuff happen for herself. There's an awful lot of dirty work. She's good at holding the ball up. She brings other players into play. I don't think she's become. I have to say, I don't think she's become more clinical in front of goal. I just think she's getting more chances, and that is because it has to be said that we are playing weaker opposition. We're not playing Australia and Nigeria and Canada. It is quite a step down, but as I said, that's out of Ireland's control. They can only beat what's in front of them. But because they're, Katie McCabe is now playing more centrally, Ireland having much more of the ball. Denise O'Sullivan's influence has grown because of that as well. And it just means that as a striker, it's a dream at the minute for someone like Kira Carusa. She knows going into these games that she will get 4 or 5 really good chances. And hats off to her because she's taken them. Still has to put them in the net. She's had some very good finishes within that. Really good header on Friday night. I thought her finish against Northern Ireland at the Aviva, although it was a mix-up at the back, it was, she showed real composure just to drill it into the empty net from sort of 25, 30 yards. When you've got nearly 40,000 people screaming at you, you do have to keep a cool head. And she's playing well, and she's benefited from, I think Ireland generally have benefited from being in this weaker group, because long-term they want to play the best teams. That will improve them long-term, and that's going to happen from April onwards. But I think after the World Cup and the way Vera Pauw departed, and there was just a heavy vibe around the camp, having this run of games where they're able to just mop up the group, get wins, get goals into people like Kira Carusa, get minutes, international football into Abby Larkin, into Izzy Atkinson, into people like Erin McLaughlin. I think they needed that. I think they just need that at this moment. They're not going to hang around at this level for long. They're going to get promoted. They're going to be in with, as I said, the bigger nations. The top 16 in Europe compete in League A of the UEFA Nations League. That's where Ireland are going to be, and that's where they should be. That's what they're striving towards, and it will benefit them. As I said, it's much healthier for them to be in that environment. But right now, I think it's good for everybody right now where they are. Not to state the obvious. Everybody likes to win games.
Yeah, and obviously they're away in Albania this evening, coverage on RT2 and RT Player underway from 10 to 5. And then they finish the campaign, as you mentioned earlier, in December. And that's going to be against Hungary at home and then Northern Ireland away from home. And that's on the 1st and 5th of December, respectively. But they could actually, we expect them to breeze through this group and qualify top anyway and get automatically promoted. But they could actually qualify tonight pretty much and just have it all wrapped up.
They can win the group, yeah. If they beat Albania and Northern Ireland are at home to Hungary in a slightly later kickoff, so they will have the luxury. If Ireland do the business, they will be able to sort of sit back and probably watch the last sort of half an hour of that match, second half of that game. If that ends in a draw, then that's it. They can't be caught with 2 games to spare. They have Hungary at home, and then they play Northern Ireland away in their final group game, and that's what they want. I mean, they just want to get this boxed off as quickly and efficiently as they possibly can. Those 2 final games would then become, golden opportunities to blood more talent, to take a look at other people. The pressure's off, and I'm sure Eileen Gleeson that they really want to do a professional job this evening, which I expect them to do. And then, as you say, that would be that. Hungary bet Northern Ireland in Budapest in the last window. Really dramatic game, actually. There was a couple of late goals. I think there was 3 goals in the last sort of 8-9 minutes. They bet them 3-2. So it's absolutely not beyond the realms of possibility that will be a draw, because they're quite evenly matched, both of those teams. But look, I think it's a formality either way, Raf. It doesn't happen in this window. It will happen in the next one, because Hungary at home, Ireland beat them, and that would definitely be it then. And you certainly would expect that to happen.
Yeah, and just looking at the squad as well, like there's only one domestic-based player, which is the interesting thing, and that's Peamount's Aaron McLaughlin, who came on the other night just before the hour mark. How much do you read into that? Because I suppose we would be talking about more, obviously, but Abby Larkin, of course, moved to Glasgow, and there have been, I suppose, in the wider player pool as well, there's been a number of movements from here to England in the last while.
Well, look, the competition and the depth in the squad is unprecedented. It's never been as strong as it currently is. Like in the match day 23 on Friday night, Lucy Quinn, Heather Payne, and Amber Barrett weren't in the 23. Niamh Fatty, Marissa Shiva, Aoife Mannion, Rusha Littlejohn, Claire Walsh, Tara O'Hanlon, Savannah McCarthy, Jess Sue, Leanne Kiernan. These are all completely missing from the squad this month. So, it's not easy to get into this panel right now. And I think when you've so many players, if you go through the squad now, Erin McLaughlin, who's been brilliant with Peamount this season, by the way, really key figure for them in winning the league title. But she's been open about her ambitions to go to England. She's in the third year of a teaching degree. She wants to get that completed. So, she will be looking, I guess, in the next sort of year to 18 months to make the move across to England. And almost all of the squad now are based in England or around Europe or in the States, in very strong professional environments. Our own domestic league is making forward strides. There's some very good players in that league, but it is hard. It is hard when you're trying to compete with players who are, in England in the Championship or the Women's Super League, where they're exposed to day in, day out, really high quality professional environments. So I just think, in terms of reading, what would you read into it? I just think the competition is very high, very strong. And for any young player in our own domestic league trying to make that breakthrough. And by the way, you're talking Eileen Gleeson as someone with an immense knowledge of that league and an immense interest and passion and care for that league. So she'll know exactly what's there. She'll know what's the cream of the crop. But if just the names that I've mentioned that aren't involved this month, seasoned international players, who've been based in England and abroad for years, it just shows you how difficult it is right now. And that's, Eileen Gleeson has said it herself, like that is good. It's difficult for her and it's frustrating for the players who maybe aren't getting in, but that's a good place for Ireland to be in.
Yeah, and then domestically there are fixtures, of course, on Wednesday. DLR Waves against Shamrock Rovers, and then Galway United against Athlone, and that will be followed then by two final rounds of games on this Saturday, and then the following Saturday. And Peamount, of course, already confirmed as champions. The cup final, we know it's going to be Shelburne against Athlone, and former Athlone manager Tommy Hewitt is set to take over as Sligo Rovers manager, replacing Steve Feeney, who is stepping away for work and family reasons at the end of this season. And then Noel King as well, leaving Shelburne at the end of the season after 3 trophies, including last season's double, and has a cup final to look forward to as well. And that's an interesting one, I suppose, for Shells as well. There's an opportunity for him to go out on a high after what has been a pretty fruitful spell.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been there since for the last almost 4 years, and 2 league titles, a cup, potentially another cup in this year's decider at Tal Stadium against Athlone. And they'd gone a while. It'd been 5 years, I think, since they'd won the league. When Noel King came in 2020. And he's got them back into the habit of winning trophies, winning major trophies. They also had a good crack at the Champions League in that time. Did a really good win in the Champions League during his reign. Also, I think the cup final will be close. I think Shells will be favourites to win it, but Athlone will be very motivated. They got bet in the final last year. Kieran Culduff came in the summer when Tommy Hewitt stepped away, and I think he's probably just giving them a renewed sort of energy and a little bounce. So I think they'll be stubborn and tough opponents. I think it will be a close game, but I expect Shelburne will probably have enough, and they're not going to need much more motivation on cup final day. But the fact that Noel King is heading off into the sunset, I'm sure they'll all want to send him on his way with another piece of silverware. And I think if he does that, it could be he'll look back on that with a tremendous amount of satisfaction, which I'm sure he does regardless anyway, because he's done a really good job.
Yeah, and before I let you go, I suppose we'll also have to mark the fact that there has been, the latest centurion for Ireland, of course, Diane Caldwell. Maybe the World Cup didn't go the way she would have wanted in terms of minutes and involvement, but she's been part of a very, very long journey for Irish women's football, and also on top of it, has been there through the dark times and the harder times, and still being there and getting that moment. And I think it was nice that it was coincidental that it's happening at Tallaght Stadium as well.
Oh, it was a really special night for her. We spoke to her afterwards, and look, there's a few in that squad who've been around a long time, and as you say, thick and thin, more thin than thick. This is the sort of glory days that we're experiencing in the last 2 or 3 years. But to get to that point, it took a lot of soldiering through tough times, and Diane Caldwell was crucial to that. 2017, that the crucial stand they took, the sort of year zero in terms of changing the game in this country. She was a very important figure in that time, and she is a very honest, outspoken person in terms of if she thinks things dip below the required standard, she has never been afraid to say that. And that's not just with Ireland. I mean, she was outspoken at her time in Reading when Reading made the decision to move back to part-time football. She did come out in strong opposition to that. I know, she took her fair share of criticism for her appraisal of Vera Pauw's time in charge. That may split opinion, but that was her opinion. That was, you'd have to say a qualified opinion in terms of a player who's been with Ireland for a long time and who is very passionate about continuing to raise the bar and raise the standards. Now, whether she should have said it in the way she did, or maybe she was too blunt or a little bit overly critical, that's people will have their own views on that, but certainly she deserves immense respect for what she's done in a green jersey. And I think she's playing really well as well. She had kind of dropped out of favour under Vera Pauw, and she's back in now. Aoife Mannion's injury and Niamh Fatty's injuries have given her an opportunity, and she's playing really well. And it was a great night for her, and it was well deserved. And as I said, she is part of that sort of little bunch of centurions now, really experienced players who are very important. Like we're talking about, Eileen Gleeson is using this window, and will continue to use this window to maybe get more minutes into the less experienced players in the squad. But that core of experience is really important to what happens next. You can't just blood a bunch of young players at once. It doesn't work. It's you need a solid core of seasoned players around them, and Ireland have that. And Diane Caldwell was very much part of that herself. Louise Quinn, even Kate McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan, who were still only in their 20s, but they've been around for so long. Like it's so important to have players like that. Erin McLaughlin spoke about it this week as well, like coming into camp and having these guys who are actual, they look up, the young players look up their icons to them as well, to get them, take them under the wing and show them the ropes and talk them through difficult situations and games. And I know Diane Caldwell is hugely respected within that dressing room and as part of that key sort of leadership group. So yeah, it was a lovely night for her, and she earned it.
Yeah, and she'll be on her way to Cap 101 this evening in Shkodër, Albania with Anthony. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Raf.
All right, so that was Anthony Pyne of RTÉ Sport Online, just discussing the Republic of Ireland women's national team, but also a couple of domestic matters as well. And this Friday, we're also going to have League of Ireland coverage at 7:35 on RT2 and the RTÉ Player. And the results, which pretty much confirmed the lay of the land in terms of who's going to be champion, which is, of course, Shamrock Rovers 4 in a row, and also who's going into the relegation playoff, that being Cork City. So Friday, Derry City won 1-0 at Cork. Dundalk beat Bohemians 2-0. Shelbourne beat UCD 3-2, with Jack Moylan scoring a hat-trick. And then Shamrock Rovers in the title-clinching victory over St. Pat's, which finished 2-0. And that was Aaron Green and Graham Burke with 2 late goals. And then the following day, Sligo Rovers and Drogheda United drew 0-0, and then yesterday, live on RTÉ, Shamrock Rovers went to Cork City and drew 0-0, and Cork going into the relegation playoff, where they'll await either Waterford or Cove, and then Shamrock Rovers, of course, celebrating a title. But before we listen to Stephen Bradley, first, Graham, the win over Pats, it was kind of symbolic. You talked about a couple of these things a bit earlier on, but the depth that they have built and the fact that the goals that came were via the substitutes was fairly symbolic of what has been built there.
Yeah, it was obviously we done the game for RTÉ on Friday, and we had spoke about at half time about the depth of the squad that Rovers had compared to Pats, and that the substitutions could change the game and what impact they could have. Pats had a good bench. They had a strong, experienced bench. They had Jake Mulroney and the Chris Forrester. They had Connor Carty, and all of them came on. But that's where the game changed. Was obviously Rovers were able to bring on Graham Burke. And Graham Burke sort of gets them playing a little bit and shows a bit of guile. What Pats were trying to do was obviously jump one of their centre-backs out to take one of the extra midfielders that Rovers had, and it worked a little bit at the start. Keane Levy was excellent in the game, and for 65 minutes, Pats were excellent, really good, showed a lot of energy. Mason Melia was brilliant, really good to watch, really good endeavour, really good hunger. And I thought when he went off, it wasn't so much... I think him going off took a lot of energy out of our team, and then Forrester comes on and plays at his own pace, and that's great, and that's good when you have control of the game. But it just sort of gave control over the Rovers a little bit. And the goal, it's a really good cross from Dylan Watson. Aaron Green gets his head in it. It's probably the one header that Redmond doesn't win in his own area that evening. And then the second goal is just a silly mistake where it's not a great pass back to Norman, and he kicks it off Burke, and it's all over. But that's what we said would be the difference between the two teams. We called on the night, and it turned out to be true. The strength and depth that Rovers can bring off the bench is unmatched in the league. They're bringing on experience, but they're bringing on obviously players who have won titles as well and know what it's like to go over the line. When you consider that Alan Manus has been out for a good bit this year, Jack Bourne has been out for nearly all the year. They've had injuries to key players at key times, but they've managed to get through it. And I think that's been the difference between them and Derry and Pats in terms of the chase and pack, is that they just don't have the strength and depth that Rovers have accrued over the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, let's listen to Stephen Bradley. He was speaking after the match at Richmond Park.
Stephen, another league title, 4 in a row. What's the overriding emotion when that second goal goes in?
Just immense joy. These players have been incredible for a long period of time. It's hard to win one title, but to win 2, 3, 4, and constantly being the team there to be shot at, it's hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes showing up every day, and these players and staff have been absolutely incredible. So immense pride and joy in what we've done. And to
emulate, everyone is talking about that team of the 80s. You have to either have been here to watch them or to know what the DNA of Rovers is like, to know what it means to emulate that group.
Yeah, we fully understand what that team done and the regard they held in to this day because of that, and we wanted to be part of that. That was the plan when we first came in, and thankfully we've gone and done that. But we'll enjoy tonight, obviously, and when the dust settles, we need to plan for the next one. What's been the key to this season? Togetherness. We've been good in patches, poor in patches. We've had injuries, suspensions. We've had people taking shots at us from all angles, and we've stayed together, and togetherness. Everybody stepped up in the squad when needed be.
Do you always believe that you're going to get to this level? Because, you mentioned the opening 5 or 6 games of the season, people were writing you off. Some people perhaps maybe took a bit of satisfaction in the European campaign. You've shut a lot of people up tonight, maybe inside and outside the club.
Yeah, definitely. There's been people coming for us from all angles. And I think if any team was going to catch us, it was this year, considering the start we had. But the players showed incredible character and strength to come back from that and then go and win the league again. It's an unbelievable achievement.
The most difficult of league titles on and off the pitch for you?
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Off the pitch was difficult. To be people coming for us from within and outside, which is not nice. And then the 4 in a row, the pressure. The players are only human. They hear about it all the time. Everyone was talking about, can we do it? And they have to cross the white line every week, and they did. And all credit goes to them. From a personal point of view, you're now the only manager to have done 4 in a row. Obviously, the 80s was 2 different managers. That's a phenomenal achievement. I know you're going to try and deflect it onto the squad and the backroom staff and everything else, but what does that mean for you as a young coach? Well, that was the plan when we came in. That's what we wanted to do. We got a bit of stick early on, a lot of stick early on. We stayed with it. We've built the group over time. We've bought and sold players, and we've done it. But I'm the front of it. I'm the face of it. It's not me. There's Glenn, Stephen, Tony, Jose, Owen. There's so many of them in the background there. So it really is a team effort. When you achieve something like this, it's not about one man. It's about the team.
There's an awful lot of speculation about the future. Is there any doubt in your mind that you'll be back to defend this and go for 5?
I want it. I want to go for 5. It's down to the board now.
Do you think that's likely that you will stay on?
Like I said, we wanted to see the top table. Now want our own table. Well, like I said, the board have to make that.
And what for you is the issue? Is it budgetary? Is it contracting players? There's been suggestions of rebuilds. Do you think the support is there that you need as a management team to press on with what your plan is for after title number 4?
I just want to see us get better. I want to see us to strive to get better every year. That's my job, to drive this club forward on and off the pitch. The day I stop doing that, I may as well retire. I'm hungry, I want more. And I feel this club is set up to want more, and that's where we should be going.
Is there a bit of a rebuild needed?
No, I think our average age is 27.3 this year. Will we keep evolving? Of course we will. But people are mistaking experience for age.
Enjoy the celebrations.
Thank you.
David, if you listen to what he said there, 3 times he mentions people coming for us. I think it's the 3rd time he mentions from within and outside. And then before touching on, putting the onus on the board in terms of taking things forward and his own future. What do you make of what you heard there?
It wasn't not so much surprising, because obviously it's just in the aftermath of winning the league. And fairness, Stephen Bradley is a very upfront fella. If you ask him a question, he'll tell you what's on his mind. And yeah, some of the issues, I suppose, have been kind of in the background pretty much, I'd say, for the last 12, 13, 14 months in terms of developing between, say, certain aspects and certain personnel on the board and himself. And obviously, from my own understanding of it, it's not purely down to just a budget issue. And when he talks about, it's down to the board or people coming at you from within, it's obviously there's stuff going on there that isn't just related to, well, how do you improve in terms of what the finance is behind the budget wise. There are other aspects to it. And yeah, he's just been upfront, and I suppose he's coming from a position now where, as he said, he wants to go, he wants to stay on and do and win, be more successful, win more titles, and he's probably at a place where position of power where he knows, well, it would be madness in the extreme, I suppose, if he was to be if he was to be allowed leave, given the success he's had. But then there's also probably the element where people, I suppose, on the board at Rovers will probably point back to the time where we were the one who kind of stood by it and showed you that support that was needed for you when you were kind of going through a struggling point of view, and we were the ones who had that longer term ability to look to the future and not kind of panic when fans were calling for them to be sacked, and it has been an effort. You look at the Graham kind of mentioned it there about the team in '87. It's very telling that if you look at what happened the month after that, they had to leave Milltown. It was sold from them. Then they were at a point where they've just about to add a stand that's going to bring the capacity up past 10,000. The difference couldn't be greater. And it's well, is this the manager now who will be there to continue on that success? And you would like to think it is. Obviously, Europe and the budget part of the issue there that's been happening over the last while in terms of not being able to maybe tie down the likes of, say, Rory Gaffney or Jack Bourne and offering the kind of contracts that they normally would have been able to kind of foresee, is because obviously they know there's going to be a significant loss coming on the back of what's happened this season, not going further in Europe on the back of the year before that when they were more successful and got to the group stages of the Conference League. So that's obviously the budget, and all the rest of it just seems to be one element to it. I don't think it's the defining factor of where some of these kind of grievances have come from, So that's something that you would think over the next little while will get smoothed out. But unless something drastic happens, I will be surprised if Stephen Bradley isn't the manager of Shamrock Rovers for next season. Yeah, and Graham, I suppose looking into the future, as Stephen Bradley said himself there, maybe people are focused on experience as opposed to age, and he feels like the average age of the squad is pretty good, but stability is always key for a club as well, and that that can't be discounted either.
No, again, we touched on it previously. The stability of the club is paramount for everyone's success, not just the first teams, but the stability's come through the fact that the manager's been in the job so long, the fact that the people running the club have put in place structures that we have a a set base in a training ground where all the players go and everybody knows that's where we train up in Roadstone. Again, the stadium's not going anywhere, so that in itself brings stability as well, and that's what every club wants. And most clubs who are stable will tend to want to be successful, and that's what it's about. And the success will continue because of that, because of the stability that's been afforded to the club. But look, I touched on it before. You know, this is all down to what the members have done for the football club, and they made that decision probably 8 years ago to give up some shares, to sell some shares so that they could build the academy. And that became the training. The academy was done through academy funds, and that became the training base for the first team as well. So everything's enhanced each other, and that's the big thing from the football club point of view, like, you know. So and like you said, Stephen is on an employee contract, so he's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. I know that David touched on that before. He's not actually he's not out of contract at the end of the season. He's an employee at Shamrock Rovers. That's what we all were when we first joined the academy back in 2014. So that's what he is. So that's what it's going to be next year, let's say, as well.
Yeah, and
it's just on that as well. It should be stressed as well. Like it's not a case of like Stephen Bradley going up against the whole Shamrock Rovers board and a big kind of like, there's obviously a clash of certain personalities and certain stuff that's happened over the last while that's kind of at the root of this, you know what I mean? So it's not as if even the makeup of how Rovers is, where obviously you've got, say, obviously Dermot Desmond having 25% and Ray Wilson having 25%, and then you have the fans and the say they have, and obviously there's the board and the members there as well. Like it's like there's still an awful lot of goodwill there, and there's still an awful lot of like mutual respect there as well. That it's not, it doesn't strike me as a case of that it's a massive power struggle between like one person and another person and going head to head, where it could be an owner then having the decision to make. That's not going to be the nature of it. It does kind of, I don't know what Graham would say, but what feels on it, but it kind of strikes me as something that can happen in football as well over a number of years, where people have been working together and there's been success and people have a sense of, well, who's responsible for the success, and like maybe all those issues as well. And then like that can just happen in football, you know, bit by bit. It's like people working together for a long time. Sometimes relationships can just get frayed a little bit, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the academy there, Graham, and Naj Razi, of course, in the match on Monday there against Cork City. He makes his first senior start, and it was interesting that he was playing because, like, I think it was the day before, I was looking at the BBC website, and in their gossip column section, it was interesting to see he was mentioned there in terms of the interest that is there from some huge clubs: Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Man City, Arsenal, all sort of being mentioned. What did you make of his performance? And also, my understanding is he's planning to stay at Rovers until he's 18 and then thinking of making a move. But what would you be looking at? Like, what would you say is best for him kind of going forward?
It's hard to know. It's hard to give Naj advice. He's his own player. Naj, he always was. He's been at the academy since he was 6 when we were in the Spa days. And he was always his own boy. He was
in what way?
He was a tough character to coach, Naj, and you know, there was times he'd take the ball himself, and that was it, my ball. And there was other times he'd be giving out to people, and like just difficult. But like those other times he'd just make you laugh, and the way he just has that thing of, he's going to find a way to get whatever he needs to get on the day, and whether that's with a football or out at times. And he was very headstrong, but he was probably one of the best players we had when we first came to the club. We didn't realise how good he was. He was 6. We used to play him up a couple of ages. I remember going to a few Southampton trips, and they were thinking, "Who's this kid?" Like, the clubs that are mentioned, I think probably 3 of them would be accurate. I think City, Chelsea and Real Madrid would be the accurate ones. The other ones, like you said, are in the gossip column for a reason. Raf, I thought he was excellent in the game. I thought he showed a real desire to get the ball back as well, which is something that was worked on with him. He had a really close relationship with Shane Robinson, who was left the club all the way up, and made sure he was... Naj's dad would have had a lot of trust in Shane, and would have taken a lot of advice from him. And Shane would have went to him and got Naj onto a pro deal last year or the year, but just as he was turning 16. What Naj decides to do now was up to him. He had a brilliant Euros with the under-17s. He was fantastic. And that was where people really saw his quality. But what they also saw was his character and his willingness to take the ball and his hunger to get his team involved in the game and make sure that they weren't going to... He was brave. The one thing I would say about Naj is he's brave and that he'll always want the ball and he'll take the ball. And it's nearly like a bravado thing of like, I'm going to take the game to you here and I don't fear you. But he'll find a way to hurt you. If you're not quick, he'll run you. If you're quick and strong, he'll come and play off you. But yeah, he's a really talented boy. But what he does and what he decides to do, I don't know. If he decides to stay at Rovers and tries to break into the first team and get more minutes, that's his decision. If he decides, look, I'm not sure if he goes to Europe, that's his decision as well. But the club have done everything right by him. You know, he's, like I said to you, he's been on a pro contract. He was in the transition year program a couple of years ago. He's gone through the Ashfield program as well, where he's doing his leaving cert, run by Stephen Gray. So the club have done everything to make sure that he can carry on and have a full career ahead of him. And he's an exciting prospect and one that we should all probably look to get behind.
Yeah, I think we did talk about him a little bit in the summer as well, along with Mason Media, of course, who you mentioned earlier on for Pats, and Ike Razi, who we were talking about a few weeks ago.
So, like, look, Naj plays with the first team yesterday, while his 19th team were down in Galway winning the FAI Cup at Eamon DC Park, where, you know, we probably would have been a big player for them this year and carried them to a final. It was a really good weekend for our academy from that point of view, and our 17s won in Tallaght Stadium. Jay Shields' team, we had a good victory down in Athlone, beating St. Pat's 1-0. Our 14s narrowly missed out. So it was a good weekend for the academy all round, and a good weekend for the club as a whole.
Yeah, and a couple of age groups up, obviously for Pats as well. So Sam Curtis, I think it's been pretty much confirmed he's going to be leaving, David, leaving Pats.
Where's he going, David?
Where's he going?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's the
truth. You've got the know, and Pats. Look at you.
No. Genuinely don't. I know. Obviously, we spoke to John Daly after the match on Friday, just on that, and he was kind of saying he seems as if Sam Curtis has made it clear to him that he does want to go because he's 18 in December. So obviously that route opens up in terms of the UK. Same obviously Adam Murphy, who could have went to Bristol. Mason Melia is another. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying, in terms of Adam Murphy, there's more leeway. My understanding is that there's a possibility he could stay.
Yeah, it didn't seem as definitive. It definitely seemed as if there could be options there for him. Kind of an avenue there for him where he'd remain as well. And you kind of forget as well with him, like, his progress probably would have even been swifter in terms of that was someone who I think would have been introduced around the time of Stephen O'Donnell, but he's had a couple of really bad hamstring injuries as well, and like he was coming through at a much faster rate, and then those have kind of hampered him. But this year is actually, he's maybe been out for a bit, but he hasn't had a major setback, which has been great for him. It's been good that he's had that kind of season, and but it's an interesting one all around because even with Melia as well, he's only just gone 16, you know, and he's starting that game. He's Pat's youngest ever player in the modern era to start a league game. The club tweeted out, but even with the Rover side of it as well and the Pat side of it, even true, it's kind of like that avenue now where, and even with Sam Curtis has played over 60 more probably now at this game, and he's not even 18 yet. Do you know what I mean? So like that's the kind of the view now you're kind of thinking in terms of lads who are at that age. Will the league sustain them for these little periods over the next couple of years where they're still going to be developing, but then have that possibility of fourth team? Because that's where, let's be honest, and like that level of maybe the same level of development that they might be getting at, say, a Premier League club or an English club or a European club at that age, that kind of, not that it goes out the window, but if they're naturally, they're going to have to emerge into a fourth team environment, and that's when it's about results, and the focus is going to change, and that development could stop slightly in terms of maybe the work that might need to be done, unless certain training schedules or certain things are amended slightly. But that can be difficult to do, and it's just something that I've even been thinking about over the last while, where players who are like the likes of a Sam Curtis are getting that development now, but in a first team environment, and it's a totally different type of development. It's a development as a footballer. Do you know what I mean? Whereas there could still be technical, tactical stuff that they might need to work on, but it's not going to get worked on as much. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense to Graham, if where I'm coming at. Where
no, you go through your development phase. They're in the playing to win phase, so they do whatever it takes to win the game on the Friday, because that's what people are paying to watch do. Where you're in, during their development phase, they're in the playing to train phase and playing to perform phase type of thing. So that, I remember listening to Mendieta talking about this years ago, and when he was at Valencia, and Gus Hiddink came in, and Gus Hiddink said, look, any of the lads who are under a certain age and haven't played over 100 games are on a different schedule to the players that have, and they would have stayed back a lot and done a lot of technical work. And Gus Hiddink was adamant that they had to do it. And Mendieta probably credits that for becoming a technically better footballer, because he said, look, technically I wasn't great at 18. I was in the first team because I could run. He says, and then we've done afternoon sessions with Hiddink constantly on a Monday and a Tuesday that allowed us to technically catch up, even though we were playing in the first team and having to perform and learning to win. Our catch-up phase was on the Mondays and Tuesdays doing our technical sessions, when the lads who are over 22 and had all this experience were able to go home. But what happened was a mindset came about in the club where if lads wanted to stay back and do extra, they join in and all that stuff. And you're right, David. The lads that break into the first team now at an early age, the value shoots up. If they don't stay in the first team, the value can dip. And then you're like, well, how do you keep value in these young players that are coming through? So Sam Curtis's value is because he's got into Pat's first team and he's stayed in the first team and he's made an impact. But then you're saying, how does he go and do extra to develop other parts of his game, his distribution? If he is going to play right back, how can he develop his distribution? But he has to go and do that extra, because he's on a different path to somebody else at Pat's, where he's 17 or 6, he's turning up to 18, sorry. But he's trying to be a full international here. Some of these players mightn't have the skill set to be a full international, but he needs to work on that to allow him to do it. And it's that conversation that you have. What's your ceiling here? Where do you want to get to? And how can we help you get there? But it is that cutting that. It's a great position to be in, but you have to realise that there might be more for my career than the league here. But how do I get it to make sure that I'm hitting the potential markers that I've set in front of myself? But you're right, there is that element of it, yeah.
Yeah, and Barry, I mean, there's an aspect I just wanted to touch on briefly as well, and obviously, your book that you talked about, that you wrote a couple of years ago, Emerald Exiles, which touches on the Irish footballers who've gone further afield, and a lot of the young players we just mentioned there, they're either, they're subject of interest from clubs on the continent, or they have, in some cases, even been on trial at various clubs. So, as that pathway opens up, like, what do you make of it, obviously, with the backdrop of Brexit in the background too?
It's obviously opened up and become a kind of a topic that we're all very, very familiar with now. Obviously, up to a couple of years ago, the idea that big foreign clubs would take an interest in Irish talent was rare enough. Like, there was young players going on trial and going to certain places, but it was kind of rare in the extreme. And when you hear about it, it would be a bit of a story. Now it's a lot more normalised, because you see those clubs looking to take advantage of that Brexit situation, as you say, and they kind of realise that the market for top Irish talent has kind of reduced when you take all the British and Scottish, like the English and Scottish clubs, out of the equation. They realise now there's a route in and they can get them. It's tricky. Like, obviously, on the face of it, it's a great experience. It's a great option to have, to be able to go to a foreign country as a young lad and go to academies where, they can learn a certain type of football. It might be very technically proficient players playing alongside guys that they wouldn't get the opportunity to play with in the UK or in Ireland. But at the same time, you have to realise, like, these are kids who are 16, 17, packing up and leaving home and going abroad isn't going to be for everybody. It's not easy. It's not simply kind of a football decision. It's a life decision. And more so than kind of players who are going over when they're in their, early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, who might be able to I suppose, take that in their stride a little bit better. You know, these are kids, so it's not as simple as and there is a narrative round at the moment. Like, isn't it great to see? It's great to see lots of young lads going over and joining teams in Italy, joining teams in Germany, wherever it might be, in France as well. There's been a few, but it's not that simple. You know, there are a lot of considerations to take into effect, like your education, like your ability to be able to go over and sustain yourself, and to actually sort of take in a new environment like that, new language, new style of play, new attitudes to football and to life. So while it's a great option to have, it's nice to see, you know, that option now kind of available to Irish players more. I don't know, I'm sure Graham knows a lot more about the kind of numbers of young players who are getting genuine interest from clubs on the continent, but it's certainly a good option, I would say.
Yeah,
Barry,
sure.
see the Italian one.
Yeah.
What's your view on them going to Italy at the moment? Because what struck me about the Italian move, and we've had players go, nothing seems to ever bear fruit. Like it's and there's a lot of people trying to push players to Italy with the view that they moved them back to the UK around about 18. It's a bit like bridging transfers, where they go from 16 to 18 with the view that they're going to come back and end up at, say, a Watford or a James Abankwah ends up back at Charlton and things like that, and it can look a little bit where they're moving them there to get them further down the road. And I don't know what your view in on it, or if what take you have on it, or any information you have on that, because that's the worry for me when I hear people going, "Oh, we have this boy going to Italy." I always worry about the Italian ones a little bit, you know.
Yeah, there obviously have been a few cases like that. So obviously James Abankwah went over to Udinese at the same time as Festi Opsele, who he's broken into the team. Obviously he's a sort of different case in the fact he was in England first and then went to Italy, whereas James has come from Pats. He barely got a kick, I think. I think he made maybe one league appearance and then went to Charlton Athletic. Obviously Cathal Heffernan was at AC Milan and is now at Newcastle. Yeah, like, kind of, I suppose the more moves there are, the more scope there is then for lads coming back. The kind of the more of them there will be, and people will start to question whether it's a route that's worth going down in the first place. I don't know whether they're getting a better education in Italy than they would get if they had maybe stayed in Ireland. Obviously, they're going over at a younger age, 15, 16 in some cases. Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, I don't know personally kind of what level of education and training they're getting over there. It's really tricky.
See from my point of view, Raf, and I'd love you to maybe ping this one out to parents here, because the issue you have with the agents with the Brexit thing is, there's agents that will come in and promise your son a trial. So he'll come in and go, "I really like your son. I think he has ability." There might be clubs interested in that child at the moment, but the agent has a good relationship with clubs in Europe. So what he'll do is he'll ring up and ask for a favour. So he'll ring a club and say, "I have a kid here. I'm trying to sign him with my agency. Will you have a look at him for me?" So we'll go to that club. The club mightn't want to have a look at the child. They might not be interested in the player himself, but he's doing it as a favour to the agent. The child comes back, the agent gets the child to sign on, and then he's hoping that another club comes and hits. And therefore, that's how they're getting players. Now, they're not getting the trials off the back of their own ability. They're getting trials off the back of a favour for the child. The problem you have is you're only allowed 2 trials per year now for these kids. So you're taking away one opportunity for them just so you can sign with that agency. And they're using it a lot. And that's how players have been got with companies before, and it's just nobody's calling it out. And the problem I have is the parents think, "Oh, it's a great experience for my son to go to this club," but they're being used, and the clubs are the agent is being a little bit underhand and saying to them, "Oh yeah, I'll get you a trial at this club, sign here," and it's wrong. and it's killing them, because now they're tied in with this agency, and then they're just sitting there waiting for this kid to do really well, and then they'll jump in on the back of that. Sometimes, and again, they'll put finances into that child to help him get wherever he needs to get, but they have to get that finances back at some stage. So there might be, then eventually a couple of clubs come in for this kid. That agent's going to push him to the club that pays the most, because he has to get that financial money that he's put down on that player back. And that's where the players and their parents are losing control over their sons and daughters at this stage. And I just think it just kills, and people are overlooking it, and they're not realising what's going on. And when you call it out, you're getting told, oh no, that's the way it goes. Well, it's wrong, because before, where you could have multiple trials a season, it wasn't right then, but it was okay. You're getting 2 trials a year. So one of them clubs could be a dead rubber because it's only set up by the agent. And then you're hoping it's all going on one trial that you have to really, really perform now. And if that doesn't work, then that's you for the year. Now you have to now you're inviting people over to watch it. But again, we should have more control over the players as clubs, and as parents, you should realise that that's what's coming down the line.
Yeah, and just in terms of the League of Ireland as well, Cork City then just wanted to touch on as well, because I think there was a lot made of the whole Guard of Honour issue there yesterday at Turner's Cross, Graham, and but I suppose for them the bigger thing is, of course, how are they going to be shaping up for the playoffs? The first half against Derry City, they actually looked like they were creating more chances and they looked on top. But how do you think they are shaping up for whatever is to come in the playoffs, whether it is Waterford or Cove?
Yeah, I think they're playing against the Rovers team that have the league sewn up, but I thought they pushed them in the last 5 minutes and showed a bit of endeavour and a little bit of the fact they were willing to run, and it wasn't a great pitch that he played on. It was a really good goal from Boyce that hindered them getting a result, but I think they'd be buoyed from the fact that they put in good performances. The whole Guard of Honour thing doesn't bother me. I don't get annoyed about stuff like that. As somebody who played for Rovers back in 2012 when Sligo won the league and we didn't give them one, again, it comes back around. It's not a big deal. Biggest thing is you won the league and that's it. You just go and take it. That's when you know you're champions, is when you pick up your medal. It's Cork's prerogative. If the league just set down a rule and say, look, you have to give a Guard of Honour if you win the league, then it's set in place. If it's not, then it's up to clubs at their own discretion. And unless it's set in place, then it's up to them. But that I remember being part of that team in 2012, where I would have been like, look, we should do it. You know, you've won the league for the last 2 years. You're passing the mantle. It's up to us to go and get it back off them. We should do it. But I think Cork probably should have done it. But I don't think it's that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. I think the bigger picture is they need to make sure that they're right going into the playoffs, and Rovers have ultimately won 4 in a row and for the second time, and no other club has done it. So I think you should just take solace in that.
Yeah, and then, of course, the battle for Europe as well. So Jack Moylan's hat-trick was very fortunate for Shells in the sense it keeps them right in that race. Bows seem to have fallen off it. They're playing Cork on Friday, and Shells are at Drogheda, and then Dundalk finishing up against UCD. So what's your thoughts on how this is likely to play out in terms of the battle for fourth place in the event that fourth place ends up being a European spot?
I think Dundalk will win. I'm not sure. I'd imagine Bows might. I'm not sure what Cork will do going into it, because they'll have 2 games this week going into the playoff. I think it's down to Shells, and they have to turn up and beat Drogheda. There was a bit of needle with Drogheda before. I think there's a bit of needle with every team Shells plays at this stage. But yeah, I think Drogheda had a lot of ex-players there from 2 years ago that Damien released. I think he had a pop at Clancy before, saying, you know, proper Shells man and all that goes into it. And now there's a bit more needle on the game, because Shelbourne, I think a draw does it for them by the looks of it. I think on their goal difference, you know.
Yeah, Dundalk would have
goals on 55, isn't it?
Yeah.
The goal difference. So yeah, Barry's right. I think a draw will do it. It's going to be a tight game up there. It's a tight pitch. So, but yeah, at least there's something on the games going into the last the last bit to make sure that happens, and then they're all just sitting hoping that Pats win the cup final then. But yeah, Bows need to get a bit of form together. They should have probably been 1-0 up or 2-0 up at the start of the Dundalk game. Afolabi had 2 great chances, one after the other. Keeper makes a good save on both of them, but they didn't look great in the second half, and they still look vulnerable from crosses. I don't think Talbot covers himself in any glory for the first goal. Afolabi looks like he's dummying it and letting him come and take it, but he just doesn't come and take it, and they score. So yeah, I can see Shells just getting over the line. I think Shells will get a draw up in Drogheda, and that will get them into 4th place, and then it's up down to Pats.
Yeah, and then David, I mean, Dundalk are kind of an interesting one because they released a statement before the win over Bowls, and it was in and around the whole potential investment coming into the club and being in talks with it, and then trying to dispel a few rumours. But then afterwards as well, then Patrick Hooban, their record goal scorer and a great player for them over the years, apparently he's been told he can leave and can look for a new club. So it's a club that seems to be in a bit of flux as well.
Yeah, no, it is, and obviously, Stephen O'Donnell, didn't he came out as well, kind of not happy with some of the kind of negativity around the club and stuff, but I think that's just a little bit of a symptom of everything that's happened post Peak Six, and even at that time when they were in charge and they sold the club, and then obviously there's the local consortium coming in as a takeover, and they now, it's clear, are trying to get investment as well into the club. Because obviously O'Donnell's come in and on the back of winning the cup with Patson was going in there to try and be the catalyst for something new happening with Dundalk, and it just hasn't materialised. And then with Pat Hooban, there seems to be an awful kind of sense of maybe just the nature of how sometimes things can happen in football where it's not handled well. Just that, he's got obviously been told he can leave. I don't think they'd be the only one. And at the moment, it seems as if there could be a few leaving, and it kind of strikes me at the moment where if you're looking at it, and maybe listen, you get what you deserve in terms of the final round of games, whoever qualifies for Europe, and obviously the cup could still have an impact on that. So you do get what you deserve at the end of it. It does kind of feel that it's Shells at a team who are kind of building towards this. You know what I mean? Maybe Dundalk, and maybe that ties in what O'Donnell was saying, where there's that sense of negativity around the place. But it just kind of feels as if he's papering over the cracks a little bit, and he's been doing a good job in terms of being able to still get them where they are. And Hooban scoring the goals he has, I think he's 12, 13 goals this season. If it wasn't for him, they wouldn't be even in the position they are, and it just kind of feels as if for the few players there, it's going to be ending for them. And even if they get into Europe, by them, has the damage already been done because they've already told that they can go,
Yeah, I was actually in that post-match huddle with Stephen O'Donnell Friday night. There was 4 of us, 4 local reporters. He came, loaded and ready. He had something to say, and he was going to say it regardless. He was asked a question. One of the first questions he was asked was about Pat Hooban's future. There obviously was that report, I think on Thursday or Friday last week, saying that he'd been told he could leave. We asked him, could he confirm that? And that's when he started talking about negativity, that he was sick of all the negativity around the club, that press reports were disgusting, that they were undermining what he was doing as a manager. To be honest, I kind of felt sorry for him a little bit. I think he's done a kind of reasonable enough job there. He launched into a staunch defence of his time. Obviously, last season they finished 3rd. I think they were level on points with Derry in 2nd. So they probably overachieved last season. And then when that happens, obviously fans, their kind of perception of what Dundalk should be doing changes. So this season has been a little bit more of a struggle. But he's brought in a lot of new players. Some of them you can question the quality, maybe. Are they good enough to be where Dundalk want to go? But it's quite a young squad he's brought in. He's got the likes of Robbie Benson and Keith Ward and Pat Hooban as well, who are kind of the elder statesmen now. But a lot of the players, they're kind of playing their 1st or 2nd season of senior football. A lot of them are new to the League of Ireland. It takes a little bit of time to bed in. I'll be honest, I see a lot of Dundalk. You could probably come away from Dundalk matches this season where you've been really, really impressed by how they've played. You could probably count those performances on one hand. But the results, in fairness, they've been getting them. David alluded to their Pat Hooban scoring goals. He's the sort of player that if you have him in your team, he'll get on the end of things and he'll win you games, scrappy games. He'll score goals and you'll win 1-0 or you'll win 2-1. But there's a lot of negativity around the club, and Stephen, as the manager, is kind of the spokesman for that. So a lot of it gets put on his door, and he has to answer these questions. He didn't confirm or deny on Friday night about Pat Hoban's future, but then obviously on the I think on the Sunday, then it was revealed that Pat Hoban gave an interview to the Irish Sun himself, where he said he was told he could leave. That's not going to go down well with fans, regardless of even his sporting ability, just the way they feel their all-time record goal scorer has been treated. So I know he came out and he was, really, really sick and tired of all the negativity around the club. What happened then in the following 2 days? First, the reporting of his sort of outburst is negative in itself, so that's not going to come across well. And then obviously Pat Hoban coming out and revealing that he has been told he can leave. It's just adding to the pile really at the moment. Obviously, a big win over UCD and potentially getting Europe would be great, but they need a favour from the Rovers Drogheda. As Graham said, I don't really see that happening, to be honest. I think Shells will probably just do enough at United Park.
From a player's point of view, Barry, and people talk about how does the negativity affect you. So if you're a player at Dundalk and you're looking, thinking, if that's how they're going to treat Pat Hoban, they might do that to me one day.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the issue. When players and fans and clubs talk about loyalty,
that's football, though, isn't it?
Ways. Otherwise, it plants a seed that you go, they're going to do that to me one day.
But it's so true. But it's across the board, isn't it? It's so rare that you see Alan Manis is getting to walk out having won the league again, and will get a standing ovation. It's so rare that you get that ending in football. Stuff can happen where, without knowing it, something could happen where, especially in the League of Ireland, where it's so intrinsic to how you finish in terms of the budget. We've seen it even with Rovers, do you know what I mean? With Rory Gaffney, where Rory Gaffney's offered a contract a few weeks ago, and he's told, listen, we can offer you this now because this is the budget we have, but actually, if we win the league, that budget could increase. He's not going to sign that contract. So it makes me be pointless. Same with Jack Byrne. But that's just the nature of it, because even where Rovers are happened with Pat previously, it's just players, I suppose, will see that, and it's for Hoban, it's mad how it's kind of materialised. But the sad thing is, and the grim nature of it, it's very, very rare that you get to walk off into the sunset with pats on the, not intended Pat Hoban, but pats on the back. Do you know what I mean? It's very rare that happens. Yourself, in terms of, you can be told, listen, you're not getting a new deal, you're gone, or we just don't fancy you, can train with the reserves, or you can go and find yourself a new club until you do. So that's just how football works,
There was a feeling at Oriel on Friday night that was the end for Pat Hoban. He started the game on the bench 2 games in a row, and which was strange in itself, given Dundalk had to win the game to any chance of European qualification on the last day. He's your talisman, he's your record goal scorer, he's your top scorer this season. Why leave him on the bench? But people knew. He came off. He came on, I think, with 20 minutes to go, and the crowd gave him a standing ovation. That doesn't happen when players come on the pitch. It happens when they come off. So I think the fans knew what was coming down the road, and it was the last home game of the season as well. So I think they knew that this was going to be the last glimpse we get of Hoban in a Dundalk shirt.
Yeah, and deserved that ovation, because he's been brilliant.
And in regard to Drogheda United then, because this is something we really wanted to talk about, Barry, so this is something we touched upon at the beginning, of course, you going over to Walsall to get an idea of the new ownership group who are involved with the club now. So the Trivella Group, US investment firm based in in Alabama, that is founded just a couple of years ago. And the board of Drogheda United Members Club Limited provisionally accepted the takeover a couple of weeks ago, and the vote will be done on the 6th of November at a special general meeting. And you touched on Walsall, the area, and the fact that there is a sense of positivity in general from Walsall supporters towards the ownership group, and people can read it in full detail on rte.ie where your full piece is. But just in regards to the Drogheda angle of it as well, because they have been a bit of an outlier in the Premier Division in terms of being the one sort of part-time outfit that has been punching above its weight, and Kevin Doherty staying part of that. When Cork City came in with a bit of interest, was that there would be investment into the future. So in terms of the short term, what are the promises that are expected?
Well, one thing Trivella have basically said is that professionalism is the key, or is definitely the aim. but it's not going to happen overnight. They've given no guarantees that Drogheda will be a full-time outfit next season. In fact, I don't expect that they will be. So you could be looking at 2025 by the time Drogheda are operating at a full-time basis, which might surprise some fans. But I mean, the problem you have with a team like Drogheda is, sure, they're competing in the Premier Division. They've got this investment now. They want to be full-time, but Drogheda United don't have the infrastructure to be a full-time team. And that's what something supporters need to realise. It's not just a case of flipping a switch and all of a sudden now everyone's on full-time contracts and we're a full-time team. It's about the infrastructure, and they just don't have that. So that's something they're going to look at in the future. At the moment, it's all about investment, really. We haven't really got much of a sense of how the squad is going to look next season. Like, I would imagine the arrival of these new investors will mean that some players will maybe, who might have interest from elsewhere, will be more willing to stay and hang around. Then, depending on what kind of deal they get or what the interest is from elsewhere. Like Conor Keeley, for example, I don't know whether he'll stay. In fact, I think I expect him to leave. He's had a lot of interest in the UK. Dale Rooney and Darragh Markey are a couple of other really key players who will definitely have interest from the League of Ireland. But yeah, look, Kevin Doherty being there is key. There's going to be some changes in terms of the kind of day-to-day structure at Drogheda United. So Ben Boycott, who's the managing director, of Trivella, will become the co-chairman, but he's based in Alabama, as you say, so he won't be there on a daily basis. But they have brought in a guy called Wesley Hill, who's going to serve as the executive director. So he'll basically be running things from Drogheda. He's a guy who used to work for Nike. He's got background in startups. So how that translates to running a League of Ireland club, we will see. How hands-on he'll be will be kind of interesting. But as well as that, Matt Jordan, who is Trivella's kind of VP of football operations. He's a former MLS player. He played for a couple of clubs in Major League Soccer. He was a goalkeeper. So he's also held technical director roles at, I think, Montreal Impact and Houston Dynamo. So he's going to come in. And what was interesting, actually, in the statement that Trivella released, announcing the kind of takeover of Drogheda United, was that essentially Matt Jordan will come in, and I think the phrase they used was he'll be implementing the kind of technical processes within Drogheda under the guidance of Kevin Doherty. I thought that was really interesting, under the guidance of Kevin Doherty. So does that mean, he'll be taking direction, taking leadership from Kev? If so, I think that's a good thing for Drogheda. I think it's important that Kevin is given autonomy to make sporting decisions at the club. I also think, like, on a really basic level, that will sway, the supporter opinion of the new owners. I think if they came in and they took away Kevin's autonomy, that would not go down well, given how liked he is at the club. Him and Dara Doyle are, fated by United supporters. They love him because they've cemented sort of the club status as a Premier Division outfit sort of really seamlessly over the last couple of years, despite all of the key personnel losses. There's been so many players that they've lost at that club. Every year they lose plenty. Even this season, over the course of the season, they lost their lone players, Freddie Draper and Alicia, who really key guys. A few others left as well, squad players. So they're constantly having to kind of regenerate and find new players from somewhere and do that amidst all these predictions of struggle. Last two seasons, I think most people at the outset of each campaign have kind of gone, yeah, Drogheda are going to struggle. They'll do well to stay up or certainly keep out of the relegation playoff positions. And the reality is, whilst they're kind of finishing 7th and 8th, in terms of points, they're nowhere near. So, Kevin and Dara have done a really good job. And I think it's just important that Trivella support them and underpin their work rather than undermine it.
Yeah, and one final point on it, in terms of Weavers Park then, and in the statement, what was interesting is they were promising to, quote, increase the overall fan experience in the short term. What does their entry into this kind of world mean for the stadium? Because that's definitely a key area that needs improvement.
The problem with Weavers Park is that it's just its location. It's so tight there. There's very little you can do in terms of really making it much more hospitable than it already is. There's really very little you can do. Now that I understand they do expect to put some investment into it. They're going to improve facilities like toilets, dressing room areas, sort of concessions for supporters, things like that. But ultimately, the kind of long-term in-tray item for Trivella will be a new stadium. We've heard quite a lot about it over the years through the FAI and through Louth County Council. There's been various different sites kind of north of Drogheda, just north of the town, have been identified. One was identified as far away as Dunleer, which is, bizarre. I don't think that would really happen, but there was certainly talk of a site. You'd be taking Drogheda United out of Drogheda, which would make no sense. But yeah, look, a stadium is the main thing. But like, what you have to appreciate as well, this isn't Trivella are not, they're an investment firm. They're not owners who are going to come in with like millions of quid and just say, yeah, no problem, here's a stadium. It's not going to happen. They actually bought at Walsall, the club didn't own the freehold of the Bescoff Stadium for years. So they were having to pay £500,000 in rent every year. So within 6 months of purchasing Walsall, they actually bought out the freehold. They took a £7 million loan from a US bank to do so. So, it's that kind of situation. It's not a case of here's the cash. Let's go and do this. This is going to be a very long-term thing. I suppose there's always a wariness from supporters whenever you hear, investment firm buys football club. There's always going to be question marks and wariness over what's in it for them, etc., etc. I suppose what Drogheda fans can kind of latch onto is the fact that they have invested in Walsall, who are a League Two club. They're not a club who make huge profits. Walsall are kind of located in the West Midlands there. They're right beside Birmingham. They're right beside West Brom. They're right beside Villa, Wolves. They're the small club amidst a bunch of much, much bigger clubs. And they don't turn profit. So it seems to be that Trivella are in for the long haul, and they're going to invest sensibly. The positivity there was kind of clear for all to see. People can read in my piece. I spoke to members of the Supporters Trust. I spoke to local journalists there. It seemed to be pretty positive, but their attitude is time will tell. And the problem with when a body like Trivella comes into a club and says, we're investing in the long term, when it comes then to drawing conclusions into the work they're doing, it's very difficult, because Trivella will say, well, it's a long-term project. Don't judge us yet. Judge us in 5 years, judge us in 10, judge us in 20. And that kind of kicks the can of accountability down the road a little bit. And, that could cause, I suppose, friction down the line with supporters. Ultimately, I think it depends on what happens on the pitch. If they can keep them kind of competitive in the Premier Division, I don't think Drogheda fans are going to be, competing for or demanding to compete for the league anytime soon. But staying competitive in the league is important. Building a stadium is very important. And again, like I say, time will tell.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to link your piece in the description box under this episode on YouTube for people who want to read it. But if not, if you're on rte.ie/sport, you'll find it there. Before we talk about Darron Gibson as well and your interview, David, Graham, first, just on the First Division playoffs. So Waterford and Cove going to be playing each other in the playoff final, and Waterford beating Athlone Town 4-2 on aggregate, 3-1 in that second leg at home. Romeo Akachukwu, who I think we also talked about a fair bit in the summer during the 17s, scoring a second half hat-trick, and then also James O'Leary, the hero for Cove, as they drew with Wexford to edge that on aggregate. So I suppose first off, your thoughts on Romeo Akachukwu and the potential he showed in Waterford's win, and also just how you feel.
I didn't think he had 3 goals in him. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I didn't think he had 3 goals in him. He's a box-to-box sort of. He scored a cracker over in the Euros as well from long distance.
From long range against Wales, I think.
All of these seem to be where he's running on and slotting them home. But yeah, it's great, isn't it? Like, what a time to burst onto the scene for him in a playoff and gets them into the playoff final. Yeah, really talented footballer. Like you said, will go box to box all day. Really, really technically good. Takes the ball in tight areas. But I like I said to him, to come on and score 3 goals, I didn't know he had that. I knew he was a different type of player, but brilliant for them. And it gives them such a boost going into the playoffs now that they know, look what we have to come on. if and when we need them, or actually you could probably start now after scoring a hat-trick. I can't see him. I think if he gets dropped after that, even as a 17-year-old, he'd probably be knocking on the door.
But how do you see the Cove, the battle with Cove now, and the balance between those two teams? I suppose Waterford are favourites, but
Cove, Waterford would be favourites. I think Cove is the carrot of going up against Cork, and both of them have that. But the Cove Cork game in a playoff would be brilliant. There'd be a proper needle in that. So look, the carrot of playing in the Premier Division is massive for every club. Waterford are probably best suited at the moment in terms of, I think, they're full time. Cove are part time under Shane Keegan, so it'd be a difficult ask for them to come up and stay up. But they're there; they might as well give it a go and see what they can make of it. But I think Waterford might have enough for them. But you know, Shane's an experienced guy now, but he's up against an experienced manager in Keith Long, so it's all to play for. And then Cork are. It's hard to say Cork are hitting form, because I don't think they've hit form at all this year. But I think they're basically staying in games a little bit better. They're becoming a little bit more dogged in the games. They're not giving up as much goals. And I do think Rory Keaton will be the difference if and when it gets to it.
Yeah, and of course, wanted to touch on the Darron Gibson interview, David. You kind of talked about how that interview came about at the beginning of the podcast, and obviously for people looking for it, it's on the 42.ie, and title is "If I Had Kept Going, I Would Have Died. I Was Taking 12 to 14 sleeping tablets a night." And you know, one of the great things about it, I think it also, you know, there's a lot of perceptions that have built up around Darron Gibson in recent years, but I think through the piece you get a real sense of his personality, and you know how, I suppose, introverted he was on his way up, then landing in a place like Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world, in the first team as well, and he's having to navigate that world. And along with that, you know, he talks about demons and also having to face up to anxiety issues.
Yeah, that's like, even like as we were chatting and beginning to get more of that sense, because he again, it was someone when he was a player and he was coming over for Ireland games and stuff, he wouldn't always do a lot of media and stuff, and there was always that element, you know, because he's a Manchester United player, sometimes they wouldn't be doing stuff. But then, yeah, as you chat, you kind of learn a bit more about him and just how open he was, and he was very open and willing to chat. But then he was saying that's only something that himself he's been able to do over the last year or so. And even when he was talking about the sleeping tablets, like, he was hiding that from his wife Danielle. Like, she was aware, like, that he was taking them, because as he was saying, like, it's something that a lot of footballers will do. And he mentioned the Dele Alli interview as well, and he'd been watching that when Dele Alli was talking about some of the struggles he's had as well. And yeah, it was just something very telling that just over the course of the year, like, always that sense of maybe not kind of feeling as if you 100% belong in certain situations. And then also when he was performing really well, especially more so at Everton, when he was, as he spoke about himself, having that sense of responsibility, that's when as well injuries then began to really kick in, and that kind of compounded matters for him. But that was basically the gist of trying to get to, like, as I said, I wasn't aware of the situation with the sleeping tablets, and it was something that obviously, as he said, he would have died if he had kept on going that way. And he made some obviously serious lapses in judgment in terms of the issues with drink driving, which he dealt with as well, and spoke about very, very honestly, and the impact that the sleeping tablets were having even at that time too. So it was just one of those moments where, like, it's difficult a little bit as a journalist, because you're obviously invited into someone's home. He was clearly ready to talk. You want to kind of give him that opportunity to speak and let him say what he has to say, especially when maybe he hasn't done it in that kind of environment before. And then you also want to kind of probe in a way that gets more out of him a little bit as well. But it was just all on him in terms of how open he was, and it was just, yeah, it was very eye-opening just to see it in terms of so much going for him, but then still, like, the personality and the person he was and what he would have been dealing with from early age and all the way through, it was always there with him. And as you begin to have those struggles in life as a footballer as well as in life, it can all become a bit too much. And he's lucky now where he's in a position where he can hopefully, where he is able to talk about it and can move on to that next stage of his life, you know.
Yeah, and it kind of harked back to the thing we were talking about Patrick Hoban there earlier. There's a part in your piece where he details how he left Manchester United, and he's brought over to talk to Alex Ferguson. It's very abrupt, like it's just like Everton have come in with some interest, and well,
yeah, because you obviously known that maybe at this earlier in the summer that maybe his time was going to be finishing, but nothing obviously came. And yeah, just mad how like. He'd gone in, got changed, had his boots on him, started doing like one of those rondo boxes at the start of training, and was preparing to go out for training. And then he gets called back in, and Alex Ferguson is sitting by the boot room, getting his own boots on to go out for training. And he's told, "Listen, Everton have come in for you. I think you should go." And he's like, "What now?" And he's like, "Yeah, go on." Like, and it's just like you've worked so hard to get to that point in your career. I suppose he scored in quarterfinals, semi-finals, the Champions League, and he was getting to a ceiling where maybe he wasn't going to possibly United judge he wasn't going to go any further, maybe, or become that and do like Anthony football, and disposable. And as he said himself, listen, there's no hard feelings. That is football. That's the business at that end. And yeah, within a couple of hours, he's at Everton, and his medical takes less than an hour because Moyes is like, "I need you in the team to play Villa on Saturday. So this deal has to be done before 12 o'clock on Friday." And then boom, in a heartbeat, it's a different element. And you forget, like, he was doing so well for those couple of years, and he has that cruciate knee injury when he comes back to play for Ireland. And then the other issues that are there, like it just shows you how delicate it can be to have that longevity in a career,
Yeah, and I suppose there's the loneliness of it as well, Graham, in terms of, like, obviously you've been in dressing rooms before, and one of the themes that comes out of it is maybe that thing of you're not going to be, and especially I suppose somebody as Gibson would say himself, in terms of being a more kind of reserved personality, not being able to share things with teammates in terms of struggles and things. And I guess it is a bit like that in football. It is a cutthroat world, and I guess people internalize a lot of things.
Yeah, I think Irish people as well would have a bigger habit of doing it. I was talking to my wife yesterday, she's a psychiatric nurse, and it's a problem that young men don't feel they're being heard, but it's the people doing the listening sometimes that will, someone that comes to you with a problem and you'll talk about football or something instead of maybe giving them an ear and letting them just talk. And I'm sure that's what David felt when Darren started talking, where, look, I'm going to give you a space here. And
that was it. Absolutely. It was like, sometimes as a journalist, you might have ideas, but when in that environment, when someone's talking like that, you just have to let them go,
And it's cause and effect. Like, it's like what happens with leaving Man United, he goes and plays and he does really well, but then he probably never deals with the fact he's left Man United, a club he's been at since he was a kid, until he maybe sits down and has his cruciate injury, and then he realizes, that was gone. We're in a, like, I remember sitting in an apartment in Dundee United, and I'd left Barnsley, and I was more devastated about that, and wasn't in a good place because of it, and I just never dealt with it. It was like, and football, generally, if football's your first love as a footballer, you're all in on it, and you sit and wonder why this game that you love so much can cause you so much heartache and pain when all you've ever done is give it love and affection, and it doesn't come back sometimes, and it can be, it's a cruel mistress, as they say. As I said to my wife, it's you're the mistress. It's a cruel wife, football at times. But and that's it. But the cause and effect of the sleeping tablets is because a lot of players are taking caffeine pills before the game, and then the knock-on effect is you're not sleeping that evening. And that's the issue, is that you're taking something to enhance your alertness in a game, but then the knock-on effect is you're not sleeping that evening. But look, it's good that he's coming out the other side of it. That's the main thing, because it would have been another one that you're worried about when you hear his story. But it's good that he's coming out the other side of it. But it can be a lonely game at times, and unless you have people around you that you can be vulnerable with and talk to, it can be even lonelier.
Yeah, I suppose that's the final point, David. I suppose his wife comes across as the real strong character there, who's, plays an absolutely necessary role in being helpful with him.
Yeah, like, because again, like, literally together since the age of 18. Do you know what I mean? Like, have a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, and she's been through. She would have seen everything in terms of football and all the stuff he would have been dealing with them with all this with everything that was going on, and then obviously wasn't aware of the sleeping tablets. But then even during his career as a footballer, that's when she makes the decision as well to kind of train and become qualified as a psychotherapist as well, because she realizes, and like, she's worked with, say, prisoners, with female prisoners in prison who are serving life in prison and stuff, and like she has her own business there as well. So like I was only chatting to her briefly when I was there in the house, because obviously she was going off to work. But yeah, he was saying himself, it's only been like what Graham said there, and he said it to myself, Darren, like just that it's only been in that last year or so since she gave him that ultimatum after realizing the extent of his issues, about being vulnerable and being open about his problems and what he was going through, because for so long he did hold everything in and didn't want to be talking about it, you know.
Yeah, but anyway, that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. We'll be back next week to review the final round of League of Ireland action and the next stage in the playoffs, as well as building to the men's FAI Cup final between Pats and Bohemians. David, thanks very much for coming on. And once again, you know, it was a brilliant piece and definitely recommend people to read it. And Barry as well, your piece, it's going to be on rte.ie/sport. I think, in fact, by the time I think we're finished here, it is actually already published, so people can read it there. But thanks for your time as well. And Graham, as always, great to have you on.
I'm going to have to start doing articles here, Raf.